Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Control Warp Podcast, episode 131. I'm Benjamin Yoder, here to actually talk to you today about video games because I finally played new video games. So, other than Shining Resonance, which I have not shelved, but it is on hold at the moment. I pretty much finished up all those games from before. So that whole list of games I said I was working on, I have either finished or decided I'm not doing anytime in the near future, like TP Robo Ziplash, just being shoved to the side for now. But yeah, I did go ahead and I'm actually playing new video games that came out, surprisingly. I know some people give me a hard time because I don't focus on the here and now and the hip and what, but today that is different, although it's not like I'm focusing on AAA releases or anything like that. The first one, and I'm not super aware of how well known it is outside of, I saw a few websites report when it was announced, Kaminazo, which I think translates to like paper mystery or something like that. I went ahead and bought that. I bought it off the Japanese eShop because it came out in Japan on Thanksgiving Day, actually. And I booted it up. That was actually the first time I bought anything off the Japanese eShop, so I had to make a Japanese account, and then I went to Play Asia and bought some Nintendo points there. It was a fairly easy process, thankfully. It took me probably less than 5 minutes to do the whole thing. But yeah, I went ahead and bought it off there, and thankfully it does have English in it. I think there were some reports beforehand they were planning for a English release, and their website actually does have the English language puzzles available on it right now. So you can go to it, and even though the entire site's in Japanese, on the puzzle page, you can actually set the puzzle language to English, and it'll let you download those. So I'm guessing it's gonna probably come out in the near future on the US eShop store. I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know when Nintendo's drop date is for the eShop store, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like sometime this upcoming week or something like that. Or if it's not already there. But yeah, I bought it off the store. It was about $25, and it's a really cool game. I talked about it a few weeks ago when I saw the original trailer, where basically you use these paper puzzle printouts that you print from the website, and then you use the paper to either cut, fold, or draw on it to solve puzzles. And I did the first 3 puzzles on stream, so at the end of this post or this video, I'm sure I'll have like the stream linked, and I'll have it linked in the description as well if you're listening to the podcast, or on the audio only version. But yeah, so I went ahead and streamed like those first 3 puzzles, and it starts off a little simple. The first one's an origami project, and it's pretty straightforward. Basically, kind of the whole concept behind it is the character basically casts spells in his mind to like remember memories. So you're like trying to figure out what symbols are on something, or in what order these symbols need to be casted, and those symbols are in relation to the face buttons on the actual controller as well as the D-pad on the thing. So it's about eight symbols you can cast, and sometimes you'll get different symbols, but you'll find in the puzzles something that will say this symbol equals this button on the controller, essentially. So it's a neat little thing, because you have to do a lot of little a little hand project stuff kind of thing. So I did kind of put a rough stream setup for it. So if you want to see more about that I would recommend watching the stream for it. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm kind of split on what we'll do for the stream going forward. I kind of want to focus on Kaminazo. I would like to do Kaminazo going forward for now, but Martian Gothic we did start too, so I don't know. I'll think about it this week, and come Thursday I'll have made a decision on if we're gonna play more Martian Gothic or Kaminazo. The biggest concern is I go to Japan on the 20th, so if I step away from Martian Gothic for too long, we might forget some things. So I don't know, we'll see. Maybe the easiest way to go about that will be to just rewatch the stream on my part before we start up again. So yeah, I would highly recommend checking that out if you find that as a curious thing. And then they also have some like official Japanese streams if you don't want to listen to me. If you're like Anthony and can't watch me cut paper because I'm too rough and tumble with my hands. So, and I also started Shenmue III. I picked that up, and I really don't know what to say about Shenmue III. It's a game that, well, I'll say this. I'm incredibly impressed that they made a game that feels like Shenmue, because obviously Shenmue 3 doesn't have the budget that Shenmue 1 and 2 had, but also we have the benefit of modern things like, using Unreal Engine, an engine that's kind of prefabbed rather than having to build something out kind of thing. You can definitely feel the budget in the game, and they do make some like interesting cuts to like, you can't sit there and like pick up a bunch of objects and look at them in 3D and stuff like that. That part of the game is just missing, and it's a little sad that it's missing, but it doesn't affect the game really at all. And you still can sit there and like open up all the drawers in the game and stare at objects. And if you go through like a vendor in the game, you can like look at all their wares and things like that, and it's all still kind of there. So I guess that's the biggest thing, is like, I'm really impressed that they are able to make a new Shenmue game that feels like a Shenmue game. And if you're a fan of Shenmue 1 and 2, I really can't like think of a reason why you wouldn't want to buy Shenmue 3. It's a great continuation of that game. I think the harder thing though, I ask, is just who is, Shenmue 3, as far as I understand, does not finish the story of Shenmue. There's still another 2 or 3 more games planned in the series, as far as I understand, and at least 2 or 3. And I've had a lot of people ask me like, what does Shenmue mean today? And I don't know the answer to that. Like, I like Shenmue 3 a lot, but I like Shenmue 1 and 2 a lot. But does Shenmue 1 and 2 provide something unique today? And I will say, from my gaming experience, it does. Because it's just a attention to detail on a micro scale, I would say. You can sit there and just like zoom in on all the objects on this desk and stuff like that. And there's definitely like a density to the world design of Shenmue that I think is really good. But I think it's also because that game is structured in a way that encourages you to kind of just, meander and just, walk around. Like, sometimes you only have one thing to do a day, and it's like 8 a.m, and you go and you do that one thing, or you don't need to get there until like way later. And so you just go and do stuff like in the environment. You're walking around this village, you're playing games, you're training with the monks. It does do that whole thing with Shenmue 2 where it's like, hey, up front, we're going to give you a bunch of stuff to do, rather than Shenmue 1 where up front there's like nothing to do, essentially. I mean, there's stuff to do, but Shenmue 1 is very precious about its combat and doesn't really want you to interact with fighting people, because in the story of Shenmue 1, it doesn't really make a lot of sense that you'd be constantly in encounters or anything like that. So I do think that Shenmue 3 does a good job of upfront giving you a bunch of stuff to do, so you don't feel like you are, wasting time on those early days, particularly, and just walking around and like talking to people. And they also have like a fast travel system that lets you fast forward time too if you want, which I think is handy. But I think, again, within the spirit of Shenmue, I think a lot of it comes down to you as the player and your willingness to sit there and look around and stare at stuff. I think part of what I think is also a really smart design decision is there's this whole herb system in the game where you basically go around and collect herbs. And, on paper that sounds real dumb, and, a lot of video games do it, but you kind of have to walk around and look for these herbs, and you can't really see them until you're up close, and then you zoom in on them, and then you can grab them, kind of thing. And it's kind of a somewhat tedious process, but it's all the first person controls are actually pretty decent in this game, and the zoom controls in general. So it doesn't, like, once you get used to it, it doesn't really take a lot of time. And the herbs really encourage you to explore like every little part. So yeah, you can walk into a corner and see that this corner is like, filled with flowers and water and nothing else. And you're like, well, there's nothing really to do here apparently. But the herbs like really encourage you to go in there, search around, make sure you have all the herbs, and then, you can leave. The one thing I am finding though is that the herbs don't really grow back quickly. And so I was using the herbs as a very effective money-making method, where you basically collect a series of herbs and you can sell them in sets to make medicine and things like that and make quite a bit of money from that. But once you have purged your village of herbs, it becomes harder and harder to find them. And I spent maybe one of the first 3 days I was in town just zooming in on the ground looking for herbs, and I was just like, I'm stealing everything from this place. But I think that was a smart money-making method that they put into the game. And money in this game, you don't have to like pay for your rent like you had to in Shenmue 2. In this case, you just have to keep Ryo fed, which is pretty easy to do. There's a bunch of food options in the game, but really black garlic seems to be the best option. I don't know why you would buy anything other than black garlic. They stock you up with black garlic in the beginning, and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna eat this because it's like significantly better food than any other food I have. And then you can find stalls where they sell black garlic for about the same price as all the other foods in the game. So I'm not really sure why you would buy anything else, honestly. Which I think is fine that you can just buy black garlic, because I don't think the food system or the stamina system, as you have to keep Rio fed, is a particularly interesting part of that game. I think it's more of a reason for you to have to sink money out of your inventory and have to, be more conscious of your money. Essentially, if you run out of stamina, you can't run very long, and you have to eat before you can run. You also can't fight, because you're just, you can fight, but you'll start with like 3 health, and so an enemy can take you down like a few hits. So I really don't know if that stamina system was really necessary to put in the game, but I think that the intention was, here's a money sink where you have to make sure you're keeping Rio fed and investing money into keeping Rio fed, similar to the rent system and Shenmue 2. I don't think Shenmue 1 had any real like money draining aspects to it. I think more or less you just kind of kept all your funds in Shenmue 1. But I think it does keep you from, hoarding all your money or something like that. But one nice thing about this game is that there's a fairly effective training system. I don't think I'd say it's a fun training system, but it's effective. So if you go and you can spar with various people in town, anyone who's like a martial artist you can spar with. There's also like a temple you can go spar with there. And for the most part, the fact that it's quote sparring is more or less insignificant. The person will attack you and you'll block it, but it's irrelevant to what you're doing in that space. What's more important is that basically they will prompt you for quick time events, and these quick time events that you do basically mimic the button inputs that you have to put in for an attack. So you'll be in charge of doing like a backhand blow or something like that. And so the button input will be like X circle circle. And so the quick time event will show you X circle circle and like kind of teach you the pace in which you need to put the buttons in. It'll let you know if you're too fast, too slow, things like that. And then you also can just sit there and spam it because it'll level up that skill in general. So basically what sparring amounts to is mashing these same inputs over and over and over again. So you X circle circle, X circle circle, X circle circle, and then a quick time event that comes up and goes X circle circle, and you go X circle circle, and all that stuff. And it's repetitive. Because essentially you're spending 5 minutes spamming the exact same move. But I will say this, and admittedly it's been 10 years since I've played Shenmue 2. I will say that I have retained way more moves in Shenmue 3 than I ever did in Shenmue 1 and 2. And, Shenmue 1 I think is understandable because the fact that there really was very little fighting in that game in general. There's like maybe 2 or 3 encounters, and the rest of the time you're just like practicing in the park. You may have been able to spar with Fukusan. I can't remember exactly if you could or not, but I think you may be able to spar with him in the first game. And then Shenmue 2, I think you could do like money battles and stuff. It's been a little while. I know there's like a whole like gimmick arena thing that was near the Kowloon Walled City where you can like do fights where it's like, hey, you need to grab this guy, and the faster you grab him, the more money you get, kind of thing. So I thought those were really interesting parts of Shenmue 2. Shenmue 2 in general is just a lot better about giving you reason to interact with different aspects of the game. And I feel like Shenmue 3 is only an improvement on that. It from the beginning is like, hey, here's the dojo. Here's how you train to get your health up. Here's how you train to get your strength up. Here's how you train to get your kung fu up, or whatever. And then they're also like, here's a bunch of mini games, here's a bunch of gambling games. They're all up front in front of you, and you don't necessarily have the money to interact with all the gambling games and stuff up front, but it gives you the opportunity to look at those, kind of figure out what they are, and then if you want to come back to them later, you can. Again, and this is kind of part of what's interesting about Shenmue is that there's a day-night system, so you are managing time somewhat. The time, the downside of time aren't particularly super apparent, but you do kind of have this day night, hey, beginning, end, and you're going to be forced to go home at the end of the day, and you have these really fun conversations with Shenhua and stuff. So I feel like I'm rambling on a bit about Shenmue 3, and I feel like there's so much more to say, and we may talk about it again in the future, but there's some other things I want to talk about here during the podcast. So I don't know, maybe we'll find another way to talk about Shenmue 3, but I'm really enjoying it so far. So if you, I personally really like Shenmue 3 a lot. I think the problem I'm going to come across with is how do I communicate that to other people who haven't played Shenmue or people who did not like Shenmue. I will say though, if you did not like Shenmue 3 will not change your mind probably. Well, unless you're talking about pacing issues, which I think Shenmue 3 has a little bit of pacing issues, but largely cleans them up pretty quickly. Anyway, so I just vomited about Shenmue, but I do have some more things I want to talk about here. Originally, this was going to be a pretty light news week, but I actually found a couple of interesting things I want to talk about. Let's get some of these smaller stories out of the way. Love Plus Every is still down for maintenance. I think they said they're looking to do maintenance until like mid-December or something, and I think they have the caveat of we may need to extend this if we need to. So I really have no further thoughts on that from what we said before, but in terms of like the actual maintenance, maybe I do. I guess the point I was kind of interested in taking is I was also looking at oh man, I can't remember what game it was. There's some other game that came out recently, and then there was also the Keiji Inafune game, Dungeons and something. Oh man, I'm blanking. But basically, the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of these mobile games will come out, be flawed, and then they'll shut down again, and then kind of revitalize themselves. And so, as much crap as I've been giving Love Plus about it, I think that's becoming more and more of a common thing. So I don't necessarily think that, Love Plus Every, being down is like the death knell for it, but it definitely doesn't look good, especially after, the 3DS Love Plus has had a bunch of issues, and then also the game was delayed quite a bit. I think maybe the difference between Love Plus Every and the other games I can't remember the names of off the top of my head is that I think those other games, it's more of a conceptual issue, so they played fine overall, but like the content of the game was problematic, so they had to take the game down and kind of rework its content. In the case of Love Plus Every, I don't think there's been any complaints about the content of the game. It's just complaints about the functionality of the game, the technical aspects of it and working properly. So yeah. And then a couple other things I saw a couple trailers for some interesting Switch games. There's a game called Billion Road, which is basically just like a board game kind of thing. I couldn't really figure out what was going on mechanically. It did seem like it was more in the line with like a Fortune Street kind of thing with like money being a big part of it. But it has a nice aesthetic, and you have like a character customization and stuff. You can customize your character when they or before you start playing. I think that's really nice. I don't know if it's based off any kind of series or anything like that, but it's apparently coming to Switch and PC. I saw the PC release had a March release date, so I don't know about the Japanese release of the game. And then there's also I believe this is also PC and Switch, or maybe it's only Switch, I can't remember, a game called Mochi Girl, which I actually really like how this game looks. It very much looks like a Dojin game. It's very simple character models. But it's basically a little girl who has a ball of mochi that she can extend out, so it basically works like a grapple hook. And what I like is that it kind of works in two different ways, and I feel like it's two different grapple systems kind of work into one. You can mochi grip things and kind of like pull yourself towards them, and then you can also mochi grip things and then it kind of swing. So it's very similar to Umihara Kawase, except for the mochi like pull thing you do where you throw and then you pull yourself to it is a structured pull. It's not a slippery one. So if you don't know Umihara Kawase, when you pull yourself towards the line after you've grappled, you kind of like slide with it, and you're kind of still at the expense of the actual physics of the game. Where with Mochi Girl, it seems very much like you grip something and you just pull straight towards it, like a Legend of Zelda kind of grapple. And it looked like it did a lot of it allowed for a lot of like very fast gameplay, a lot of speed, and it looked really cool. I think it just looks really smooth, and I think movement is a huge part of me for 2D platforms in general. Like I want a game that feels really good to move, and that when it does feel good, you can also go really fast. So in the trailer, and I'll link the trailers for Billion Road and Mochi Girl in the bottom of or in the description or something. But interesting thing I saw about Mochi Girl, it moved pretty fast with it. One other, everything is very much Umihara Kawase like, in terms of like everything's just kind of this abstract floating environment. There's not really a lot of like, sense of real world space to it, but it is a lot of real world objects and stuff, and like buildings and things like that. One thing that's kind of interesting is that the entire level, as far as I can tell, below it is just water. And so in the case of Umihara Kawase, if you fall in the water, except for I think if you're still like latched onto something in Umihara Kawase and you fall in the water, you can hold on still. But in the case of Mochi Girl, if you fall in the water, you can like swim. So like you can also move that, or integrate that into your movement. And I don't know if there's like a specific time you can be in the water, or if there's like a death state while you're in the water. But in the trailer they showed, you could like kind of like spin and swim through it and like kind of launch yourself back out of it and stuff, which I thought was neat. Like that the character could actually just swim, and it wasn't like a death state once you touch the water kind of thing. And the last bit here that I wanted to talk about is just some more Jet Girl stuff. So there was a pretty, I think like an hour-long Jet Girl stream that went up recently. And so just wanted to give some more thoughts, because the initial stream I saw was very much focused on like the first stage of the game, and I think showing off kind of very, very basic mechanics. So this one is I think has given me a lot more confidence about the game. I think one of my major concerns was the lack of conflict during races that I was seeing in early footage, and some of the early tracks they show in this actual stream have the same problem, where the person in first gets so far ahead that they aren't really dealing with anything. And I don't know if it's like a AI level issue that they have, or if like something to do with that initial track and how it's structured, kind of keeps players separated. But I really wasn't seeing that, because, it's a whole water gun shooting game where, everyone has water guns supposed to shoot at each other, and you can like shoot in front of you with like a little water stream. And I think that does have some, impact on the game, but I think it's also kind of a fairly straightforward kind of shooting mechanic for a racing game. Essentially, you can shoot somebody until their shields deplete, and once they deplete, they kind of like spin out like they hit a banana peel or something in Mario Kart, and they actually move pretty slow, and then they get like a recovery shield that shows up on them afterwards until their shield kind of comes back in place. And I will say that when you actually get your shield broken, it pretty much slows you down to 0. So it is a long recovery as you get moving again. One thing that's nice is that the recovery shield actually seem to be color coded properly this time around. If you don't know, this game is being developed by the Senran Peach Peach Splash developers, Honey Parade Games. And in Peach Peach Splash, there was a shield system you could use, and everybody had a shield if they got broken down to like half HP. But there's also like these item shields where it was difficult to where you could put them on at any point. So the problem was, though, is that the item shields and that half HP shields looked exactly the same, but they had different properties. So the item shields had durability, you could break them and take them off, where the half HP shields had no durability but were on a timer. So it was really, really confusing to know what shield somebody had, and whether or not you should be wasting your ammo on shooting someone's shield, or you should be waiting it out. It was just very difficult to tell. And in this case, it looks like when your shield breaks and then it's not hurtable anymore, the shield turns red and says recovery, which I'm really glad they made that change. I wish they patched that change into Senran Peach Peach Splash, but at the same time, that game is so dead that why would you do that also? so yeah, I'm really happy to see that. They also, another kind of a problem with Senran Peach Peach Splash, talking about it, is once the online was dead and you couldn't find people to play games with, you really couldn't play any games online at all. With the exception of the wave defense mode, where you could basically do waves, or I think you could do like a free mode where you could manually set the number of players, so you could technically do one-on-one. I'd have to go back and check on that free mode one, but I know you could at least do like the tower defense kind of game. But that's not the main game of Peach Peach Splash, so that was a problem, that you couldn't really have CPUs be a part of that conflict, or a part of the online experience at all, outside of the tower defense mode. So in this case, it looks like you can pair up CPUs with other players. One of the last races they do in the game, they show two players playing. One is Marvelous 1, one is Marvelous 2, and they kind of switch between them. But they also showed that the other players in the match were CPUs. So I think that's a really smart move and something that they really should have considered with Peach Peach Splash from the beginning. But, it's Peach Peach Splash is dead. It's too late. Give me PBS2, I guess. This is probably the closest we'll ever get to a PBS2, and honestly, I prefer it to be this way because it's something different. There's also more of like a special skill system that they had in the game, but I wasn't really sure how this worked. This particular thing showed up during the part of the stream where they were showing off Asuka and Yumi from Shinkagura as playable characters, and Asuka does like a little ninjutsu pose, and then they get like a speed boost. And so I don't know if that's going to be a speed boost in every case, or each character has their own skills that have different effects and things like that. But I'd be curious if you could do various other skills and things like that with characters. So I don't know if that's it's just everybody has a special animation with the speed boost, or if they could do like individual skills or anything like that. But I'm curious to see what that ends up being. And then also, I'm pretty sure, I was not certain initially, but I think you do have some form of aim control when the person in the back of the jet ski. So it's basically kind of like Mario Kart Double Dash, where you have two characters on a jet ski. One character up front drives, and this other character in the back shoots, essentially. And so when you're shooting forward, you basically are just driving and shooting. There's no real like change. But when you shoot backwards, it actually goes into a third-person shooter mode with the girl in the back, and it looks like there is some level of aiming in that back section. I'm gonna guess it's a lock-on aim, if only because Peach Peach Splash had a lock-on, and then also I think it just makes more sense, as a racing game. But it does seem like the driver, as far as I can tell, more or less just goes in a straight line once you aim back to shoot. So it seems like it's going to have a very specific use on very specific tracks where you have like a straight line you can go down or something like that. But we'll see. Maybe there's like some kind of like light AI on navigating the course slightly while you're trying to shoot. But it seems like you have a pretty limited amount of ammo when you're shooting backwards. And the only other thing in there is they actually showed off some of the customization, which is neat, and it looks about on par with Shinkagura Peach Peach Splash's customization, maybe a little less even, because I think in Peach Peach Splash you could like sit there and do a lot of weird things with the accessories, where you could kind of like move them around and make them float in the air and stuff, because sure, why not? Very similar to how like I think it's Neptune Block versus Zombie or something like that has a character customization system. I kind of feel weird with these kind of character customization systems, though, mainly because, these are predefined characters in the game, and so it's strange to me that you would take a character who has a character design and then kind of change them to kind of fit your own needs. And I slightly did that in Peach Peach Splash. I gave Homura blue hair because she kind of, when I didn't know who Homura was, she kind of reminded me of Tamsoft. So I was like, oh, I'm going to make her look like Tamsoft, kind of from, well, not the company Tamsoft, but Tamsoft in the Neptunia series, which I've only experienced through Blanc vs. Zombie. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about all like different hair customizations and different, like a bunch of different other stuff for characters that are kind of like set characters within a world. I gotta protect the Jet Girls lore. You're breaking my immersion by changing their hair color. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I just feel a little weird with those kind of customizations. And Sword Art Online Hollow Fragment had a similar thing where like you could customize Kirito, but Kirito has such a distinct look already. Well, not, he's very generic in terms of how he looks as a character, but he has a defined look that all this other media has provided. And, allowing you to customize that just seems a little strange to me from, whatever. I know I'm just getting caught up on it. I think it's perfectly fine that it's there because I can always make the choice of not customizing them if I really want to. And I do like the option to change clothes and stuff like that, because that I do like. But the ability to like sit there and like change a character's skin colors and eyeballs and all that stuff just seems really out of place for like a defined character to me. So yeah. I kind of wish those games had like okay, here's all the set characters and then let you customize them, but also had like and here's just like a blank template character that you could make. remember one of my friends in Peach Splash played as a particular character because she was like the only character who had like a mid-size bust size or something. Everybody else was either flat chest or had ginormous boobs. So he was like, I'm gonna take this one character and modify her so I can have a reasonable chest size. So yeah. I think that's it. But yeah, I'm excited for that game. I think it comes out in January in Japan. I don't know if there's been a localization announced yet. I'll have to do some looking into that. I don't think I'd import a copy. But we'll see. I have general confidence that Jet Girls will come out in the US. When it will come out is another thing, but I think eventually it will. So that's it for this week. Thanks for coming. In terms of content, I'm still working on stuff, trying to figure it out. I did last week say that there would probably be a Gun Pixies quick play. I went ahead and tried to record that, and I think the structure of the game just does not lend itself well to the quick play format, similar to like Final Fantasy 15. So I'm gonna skip on doing a quick play for Gun Pixies. I'm going to try to find another way to cover it. I just don't know when that's going to emerge. So I'm looking into options, trying to see what makes a lot of sense. I do think that there could be a little bit more said about like sexuality in game, not sexuality in games, but like sexual aspects of games and like how it affects game design and things like that. And I feel like Gun Pixies to some extent falls within the range of that conversation. So maybe either I'll have something that's focused on Gun Pixies and kind of talk about that aspect as well, or focus on the other part of the conversation and use Gun Pixies as a part of that. But I do want to do something with Gun Pixies. I just don't know what it's going to be yet. So looking into options, seeing what makes sense, and I'll let you know as we get closer. Same thing for Shenmue 3. I don't really know how that's going to manifest at this point, but I'm looking into it. So unfortunately, I don't really have a lot of content that I can guarantee coming up here in the near future outside of the usual podcasts and streams. I did do I did the Kaminazo stream, which I mentioned earlier, and then I did do a Thanksgiving stream last week. So both of those are up on the website. The Thanksgiving stream is pretty much me just playing some Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. So if you want to see me do that while I chat with people, that's fine. I also eat some food on Thanksgiving Day in Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, or Harvest Day, I guess is what you could call it, as like a silly little thing. So if you want to see that, that's on the website as well. And then and then I also last week had a quick play We Play Motion quick play. So that's up on the website too if you want to see that. Hopefully this weekend I'm going to start doing some work on trying to figure out what's next. I know I said I'd try to do that last weekend, but I didn't really get much further after I sat down and kind of looked at some things. So this week I'm going to try to basically force some writing to figure out if I can make a script work somewhere and begin a next project, but we'll see how that goes. I think I on Wednesday night and Friday night I spent a lot of time playing Shenmue 3, so I think I'm done for Shenmue 3 on this weekend, but we'll see. Anyways, thanks a lot for coming. OneControlPort.com is the website. I hope you have a great week. Bye.